Hello everyone, today I will be reviewing A Clockwork Orange. So, A Clockwork Orange was released in 1971 and was directed by Stanley Kubrick, and this film is based on a book by Anthony Burgess which was released in 1962. The main character in this film is a guy called Alex Delarge, played by Malcolm McDowell, and he and a gang of three other guys, they are basically people who go around committing acts of theft, rape and murder, and he also really enjoys listening to Beethoven. That is really what this character is all about, and he and these three guys, they commit lots of crimes, lots of evil deeds during the first really third of this film is what they really tend to get up to during the start of it. So they go around committing these crimes, and eventually Alex gets caught. He gets taken to prison and he undergoes this rehabilitation treatment known as the Ludovico technique. And this is a new experimental treatment, and it is supposed to reform criminals and potentially stop them from committing crimes. So what happens is Alex undergoes this treatment where he is having these drops put in his eyes and he's being forced to watch these films where horrific acts are going on, such as the Holocaust, and seeing concentration camps and watching people being murdered. And the idea is that this treatment will have an effect on Alex and make him stop committing crimes in the future. As you can probably tell from what I've just been saying, this is a very dark film. It's a very dark, twisted film, and is certainly not going to appeal to everyone. It was a very controversial film when it was released. In America, it was given an X rating, and it actually did do quite well at the box office in America, and was even nominated for 4 Oscars, including Best Picture, which actually lost to The French Connection. There was actually only one other film, which is Midnight Cowboy, which had both an X rating and a Best Picture Oscar nomination. This is a unique film. There's not really any other films I think I can compare this to. I've seen it twice now, and it stands out very clear in my mind as a film which really stands on its own. There's no other film that I've seen like this. I think this was a very experimental film for its time. You certainly can't imagine a film like this being released 10 years before, because the production code certainly wouldn't allow it. And in the UK, the censor laws were quite a bit harsher. So this film actually was given a release, but there were a few crimes which happened the year after this film was released, which, well, there was proof shown that the crimes were inspired by this film, and they were actually linked to this film, and as such, the film A Clockwork Orange was actually withdrawn from circulation in the UK. So for a while in the UK, if you wanted to watch this film, the only way that you could do it was to import a VHS from abroad, from a country like France, for example. However, after Kubrick's death, well, a year after Kubrick's death in 2000, a film was later made to be able to watch again. So really, one of the themes of this film is about crime and punishment and rehabilitation, and the idea is, how can we as a society end crime, and how can we stop people committing crime? But it also deals with the idea of, if we stop people from committing crime, are we potentially interfering with their free will? Now, you really need to watch the film to understand what I mean by that, because there's certain techniques they do where Alex, potentially, he still wants to commit the crime, but he's just not physically able to, because the treatment is preventing him from doing what he wants, even though what he actually wants to do is potentially evil and not something that society deems good. If the state can deprive an individual of his free will, making him a clockwork orange, what does this say about the techniques used for crime and punishment? So the phrase "a clockwork orange" actually comes from a Cockney rhyming saying, "as queer as a clockwork orange," which basically means something that is very strange on the inside but comes across as completely normal on the outside. And this is almost what the character of Alex is like. He's a very twisted individual, but he probably comes across looking like any other member of society. If you watch this film, you will notice that the characters talk in a very strange way. And they actually talk in this made-up language called Nadsat, which is a mixture of the English language, of Russian language, and also a bit of rhyming slang as well. So a lot of the time you'll probably be able to understand what the characters are saying, but they sometimes say the words in a different order than we might say them. So it's difficult to give an example, but if you watch the film, you will completely understand what I mean. There are some times when characters say things which, well, they use words that we won't have heard of before, but the way they use the words in the sentence, we can work out what they mean. And it almost does make sense, even if it does come across a bit bizarre. And the reason for this is that Anthony Burgess, who wrote the novel, he wanted the story not to age, so he wanted it to be a bit more timeless, so he used this weird sort of language, and in some ways it does work, and you get used to it as you're watching the film. You sort of understand what's going on, and this is the way that the characters talk. Now, one thing that I really appreciate from this film is the use of colour. So we get so many bright colours throughout this film. In a way, the bright colours are almost a contrast to the actual dark theme of the film. And this film has excellent use of camera shots. So a lot of the time, Alex DeLarge, he is the main focus in this film. We get quite a lot of wide-angle shots in this film, particularly during the times when we see things from Alex's point of view, because obviously he's the main focus of the film. And I do really appreciate the use of classical music. So we get a lot of Beethoven, which is playing in this film. Alex is a big fan of Beethoven, and it's really strange listening to a piece of classical music which, when listening to it, can seem quite innocent, but then you're seeing these acts of horror on the screen at the same time as this music is playing. So they seem in contrast to each other, which is exactly what Stanley Kubrick was going for, and it just makes it a very strange experience watching this film. I've seen this film twice, and I have to admit, the first time I watched it, I remember watching it for the first time. After the first 20 minutes, I was pretty horrified by it. I was thinking, why would anybody want to make a film like this? This is pretty disgusting. Or why would anybody want to write a story like this? But once you watch it as a whole and you look back at the whole film, you can really put it into context and you can see what a special film it is. And this is certainly not a film which is going to appeal to everyone, but it's a unique film. And it's certainly a film that once you watch it, you'll probably remember it for the rest of your life, whether that's in a good way or a bad way. It's very difficult to compare this film to anything else. I think it's a very special film, and I think people should give it a chance if it sounds like your kind of thing. If you're not into dark films, then you may want to steer clear of this. It's certainly not a family film. It's certainly not something that people can sit down with the kids and watch. Obviously, in America, it was an X-rated film, and it's worth saying it's a very violent film. So overall, I do like A Clockwork Orange. I think it's a very important film, one of the most controversial films of all time. So I'm going to give it a rating of 9 out of 10. I really like Stanley Kubrick as a director. This isn't my favourite film by him, but I can certainly appreciate it, and it is certainly a film which I will remember, and I probably will come back to watching again at some point. So definitely check this film out if it sounds like your kind of thing. If it's not your kind of thing, I can completely understand, because it's not going to be everyone's cup of tea. But there we go. That is my review of A Clockwork Orange. So there we go, guys. So that is A Clockwork Orange. So what do you guys think? Have you seen A Clockwork Orange? If you haven't, would you like to see it? Please let me know down in the comments what your thoughts are. Anyway, thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.